Well, earlier, CBS News chief Washington correspondent and Face the Nation moderator John Dickerson talked to CBS this morning about the latest developments on Robert Mueller, Sessions' testimony, and the president's first cabinet meeting.
It's interesting to hear Marco Rubio because that's what matters. It matters that it would be obviously a huge deal if the president did this. But the question really then comes back to the Congress. And would Republicans say this is going too far? Because that's what matters, is if the president does something that starts to have people in his own party leave him. So far, they haven't. So far, after last week's testimony, they were still supporting the president and foursquare behind him.
And when you turn to the Attorney General and his testimony, what do you think is the most important thing we might get from him that will add to the Comey-Trump conflict? Well,
what we get from him, they may not get much from him, because on the Comey-Trump area, he will likely say executive privilege. And basically, my conversations to the president about this and any area around it are privileged. The question then would be, what about his conversations with Comey himself? And that'll be interesting. In other words, James Comey asserted a lot of things about what the Attorney General did or didn't do, and the Attorney General could stand up for himself, and that area we might actually get some information.
He's a former colleague. How do you think he'll be treated today?
Well, that'll be interesting to watch. I mean, there was a lot of deference given to James Comey from Republicans and Democrats last week. Some members of the committee see themselves in bright lights and see a potential, star turn for them. So how they treat him will be a chance for them to burnish their own sense of themselves. But he's a former colleague, and usually there's some deference that's offered to a former colleague. So that'll be an interesting piece of theater to watch.
We saw what can clearly be described as an unusual cabinet meeting yesterday, with each of his secretaries praising him, saying it's an honor and a blessing to serve him, etc. Who organized it this way, and why did they do this?
Well, it was an extraordinary bath of adulation. I'm not sure what the organizing principle was. It was clearly a public relations effort to bolster the presidency. What's interesting is, I mean, not only imagine if that were used to talk about the agenda for the forgotten man that the president ran on, to talk about the opioid crisis, to talk about things that were being done for the people that elected him, as opposed to just merely offering praise after praise.
Well, in fact, the president himself said never has there been a president, with few exceptions, who's passed more legislation, who's done more things. That's just not true. There isn't a major piece of legislation that's been passed.
There are the pieces of legislation, to the extent the big ones that have passed are ones that basically were passed through the Congressional Review Act, which is basically something that they had preloaded before this presidency. So on his big agenda items, they have not come through. And that's right. This is another claim that bears some challenge.